And hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I had a lot of things just towards the end of the day that all needed to get taken care of all at once, and I had to make sure I covered all of that. One of which, of course, is my problematic dog. And yeah, welcome. This is another episode of the Saturday Spiritualist. This one, it's kind of a jokey one, but it's not, but it is. I'm going to be trying to look into it as serious as I can, but it's kind of a parody, but it isn't. You'll find out when I get into it. How's it going, James, in the chat room? And it's kind of like my episode about the flying spaghetti monster, only this one is even a little bit more serious than that, believe it or not, despite the source material that it came from. Um, and I'm gonna delve into it a little bit. It's I'll be honest, I looked into it and it's interesting, and if it helps people feel spiritually fulfilled, great for them. Um, I think it's kind of silly, but I don't want to say that in a mean-spirited kind of way. You know, I don't want to look down on anybody's religious choices and things like that. So that being said, tonight we're going to talk about Jediism. You heard right, Jediism. We're talking about the official real-life Jedi philosophy based on the Star Wars religion and all that, which there's a big glaring hole in this that makes it not quite work the way I would think it would work. That'll probably be obvious to a lot of people as we go along, but I'm going to address it a little bit later. So, what is it? What is Jediism? Um, it is, according to Wikipedia, a philosophy or also a tongue-in-cheek joke religion, depending on who you ask, based on the depiction of the Jedi characters from the Star Wars franchise. Apparently, and I didn't know how this got started, but apparently this started out. There was a census in both the UK. Actually, it was a worldwide email campaign in 2001 urging people, while various countries were doing their national census, like the United States and the UK and a few. I guess a lot of stuff happened concurrently. I didn't realize that people coordinated on that kind of stuff, or like different countries. When you do the census, of course, it's taking a number of all the different people that live in your country for demographic reasons and probably for nefarious like political reasons, of course, for so they can redraw states and all that kind of stuff. But apparently there was an email campaign in 2001 urging people to write Jedi as their answer to the religions section in their country's census. And while the majority apparently claimed it as a joke, there were so many of them that a few people were kind of like, you know what, this got attention. Let's do something about it. So they set up, and I'm going to go through the beliefs in a little bit here. They set up the ground parts to it. And as of 2005, the Temple of the Jedi Order was registered in Texas and granted an IRS tax exemption in 2015. So it's officially recognized here in the United States, at least in Texas. Who knows where else? But in the United Kingdom, there was something called the Racial and Religious Hatred Act that was a amendment that was proposed to exclude Jedi Knights along with Satanists and believers in animal sacrifice from religious protection. It was apparently a joke by whoever proposed it because it's to illustrate a point that defining religious belief in legislation is difficult, which is true. We're still grappling with those kind of things right now. The United States has a lot of problems with how it adjudicates cases of religious freedom with Christianity and with Islam and things like that. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to navigate. And so in 2007 in the United Kingdom, a young man founded the Church of Jediism with his brother, believing that the 2001 results recognized it as a religion, and that there were more, quote, more Jedi than Scientologists in Britain. That's possibly true. I don't know. I don't know how many Scientologists are in Britain. And so there's and even in Turkey, in the country of Turkey, there was a petition of change.org on change.org demanding that they be allowed to build Jedi temples on school campuses there, because the schools were pressing to get mosques, because Turkey is more or less a Muslim country. But those who weren't Muslims saw that, oh yeah, if you're going to build a mosque, then I want you to build this. I want you to build this. I want you to build this. Kind of like how the Satanic Temple does here in the United States. Anytime you have a city or a state that says we want to put the Ten Commandments in front of our courthouse, we want to put a statue of Jesus, or we want to do this, we want to do this, the Satanic Temple comes along and says, hey, in the interest of religious tolerance and freedom, we also want to put a statue. We want to put a statue of Baphomet, which is the horned demon god with two genders, and with like holding up the one hand and the other one, and with the hooves and everything. So, and they've been successful sometimes. Don't mind this cat. This striped one, the mother of the black cat that you guys saw from This Uncanny Earth. Tangent, I know. She was brought in as a rescue, same with the kitten, and we're waiting until he's old enough to get him neutered, and then at the same time we're going to get her spayed. But in the meantime, she's not, so she runs around the house in hot weather looking for male cats and being very vocal about it. So if you hear a bunch of yowling, there you go. Welcome to cats. Back on topic. So the whole Jedi thing was meant to be a joke, because of course it's from Star Wars. And this is one of the things I needed to address that kind of keeps it in the realm of a joke for me. But in the Star Wars media, in the movies and books and whatever, Jedi use a supernatural power called the Force, right? It's the supernatural ability. It's like an energy field that you can tap into that's all through the entire universe. And Jedi can tap into it, and they're sensitive to it, and they can tell, different things. We don't have that in reality. At least we don't believe we do. And we don't have any evidence that we do. There's a lot of different things you can say. You can manipulate quantum physics or something like that. You could say it's a universal consciousness, that kind of thing. She's too young to be a cougar. She's only like she's maybe a year, 2 years old herself. So she's a kitten having kittens. Teenagers having kids. And so we don't have, like I said, we might have universal consciousness, that kind of stuff, but it's not proven, and not enough people can actively tap into it. And people can't use it, to my knowledge so far, on a widespread scale, the way that they use the Force in Star Wars. And Vril energy is a good point too, and that's something I think we've talked about on This Uncanny Earth in the past episode, and maybe we should revisit it. Actually, I'll talk to Rob about it when he's done with his presentations, and see if we can get back to it, because that was an interesting topic as well, with the Thule Society and all that other good stuff. So because we don't have that, a central part of the Jedi philosophy is kind of missing. And you have to, if you declare yourself as a Jedi, as many people have, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, which makes it almost like cosplaying, sort of. But again, I don't want to look down on anybody who actually, like, if this helps you as a person, okay. If it doesn't, But there's a pretty big set of things attached to it, and I had to look them all up because I didn't have ready access to it. So let me find the page, which I actually went to templeofthejediorder.org, which is the International Church of Jediism. This is their official website. And it was published in 2007, last updated in May of 2022. So it's still actively looked at. Now they say, if I can get my cat from clawing the window, she's mad at me. They describe it as, quote, Jediism is a religion based on the observance of the Force, which again, kind of a big hole, but we'll move forward. A ubiquitous and metaphysical power that a Jedi, a follower of Jediism, believes to be the underlying fundamental nature of the universe. Jediism finds its roots in philosophies similar to those presented in an epic space opera called Star Wars. It is a religion in and of itself. So at least they acknowledge where it comes from. They don't try to cover it up. They don't try to like say that it was some ancient thing that predates the movies and whatnot. The movies themselves, the Jedi religion actually is based on some real life things. It's based off of Taoism and in certain aspects of Buddhism and a few other things that George Lucas kind of pulled from and sprinkled in when he was writing the original treatment for the first, which became Episode 4. To continue, quote, the Jedi religion is an inspiration and a way of life for many people throughout the world who take on the mantle of Jedi. Jedi apply the principles, ideals, philosophies, and teachings of Jediism in a practical manner within their lives. And this is where I'm kind of like, okay, I can see that. I don't want to treat it 100% as a joke, because anything, if you treat it practically, as long as it works. I mean, some things like absurdism is kind of difficult to use in a practical sense, but you can if you work hard. Real Jedi do not worship George Lucas or Star Wars or anything of the sort. Jediism is not based in fiction, but we accept myth as a sometimes more practical means of conveying philosophies applicable in real life, which is a neat way to say it. They acknowledge where it came from, but they also say they don't have a central figure. They don't worship things. They don't go nuts about it. And there's also no central, like, even though there's this website and there's obviously somebody who runs the website, they don't have a Jedi council. They don't have a central Jedi person. They don't have a world leader. They don't have like a pope or anything like that on purpose, because they don't want to consolidate all that kind of stuff into one person or group of people, which makes sense, because if you're going to have an outlying spirituality or religion, you want to keep it kind of widespread and let people do their own thing with it. You don't want to get them stuck on rules and regulations and dogma, because that's what the major religions do. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It can be taken in a negative way, but I don't mean it that way. They're obviously a lot more strict, like especially if you're an Orthodox Jewish person, or if you're an Orthodox Islamic person, there's a lot of very strict things you got to do. But in a lot of the alternate things, like the Jedi stuff, then it's a lot more loose. Now they have 3 tenets, and I should have done slides for this, but I didn't have the time. Today was a rush. Like I've been running around all day. The first tenet is focus. Focus is the art of pruning the irrelevant and pouring the best of your mind into what you are doing, which is a good thing to do. I can get behind that. Knowledge. Knowledge can be acquired by focusing on the task at hand. Sure, you learn by doing. I can get behind that. And wisdom. Wisdom is the sound application of accrued knowledge and experience through patient, good judgment. And I can get behind that too. Those 3 things, I see nothing wrong with. As far as the basis of a philosophy, that's fine. You could actually take a lot of this and take out the whole Star Wars Jedi connection, and it may still work. It may still be decent. They have the Jedi Code, which is lifted directly from Jedi literature. I'm not going to repeat that, because if you want to watch the movies, you'll see that. They have a creed, which is, again, it was apparently adopted from the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi in 1915. He himself didn't write it. It was author unknown, 1915. Francis of Assisi is actually a pretty famous religious person for Christianity. If you want, look him up. Next, we have the 16 teachings. Now, these are where things get a little bit kind of like I don't know. They get a little. I don't agree with all of the 16 teachings. I'll tell you that. I think some of them are good, and some of them are kind of like stretching things a little bit. But we're going to go through them. We're going to give this a fair shake. We're going to give it a fair shake. We gave the spaghetti monster a fair shake. We gave Wicca a fair shake. We're going to do that with this. So, 16 teachings. Jedi are in touch with the Force. Problem, because there's no Force, unless, of course, you have your real energy, like James said, or your universal consciousness, whatever. They are open to spiritual awareness. Good. Keep your minds in tune with the beauty of the world. Okay, very Buddhist. Forever learning and opening their minds to experiences and knowledge of themselves and others. Okay, good. I can get behind that. I can get behind that. The whole like beginning part with touch with the Force. Okay, but taking the plot holes out, the rest of it's good. Jedi maintain a clear mind, which can be achieved through meditation and contemplation. Solid. Meditation is a good thing. I don't do meditation myself. I have in the past for different things, but it's not a daily thing for me. But if it is for you, or if you think it might be good for you, then that's a good idea too. Yeah, Deadpool Head in the chat also been looking forward to this. I've recently found a Taoism and noticed it reminds me of The Mandalorian. And like I said, that's one of the things that George Lucas pulled from when he made the Jedi philosophy. So there are a lot of good things in here. I think there's too much of the franchise, but I think there are a lot of good things in there. And if you want to go out and identify as a Jedi and follow these things, I would encourage that. I'd say go ahead. I don't want you to run around in robes with a cosplay lightsaber and like pick duels and things, or always yell at people for falling to the dark side and whatnot. But I think the core stuff of this is decent. So we're going to go through the rest of it. Number 3, Jedi are aware of the future impacts of action and inaction, and of the. That's a good question, James. I don't know. They don't say. And of the influence of the past, but live in and focus on the now. And this is a particular point that I'm big on. I'm huge on this point in my daily life. We as people, we remember the past, or at least we remember what we think of the past. And we can imagine the future, but we don't know the future. The only part of reality and time that we are consistently aware of at any given point is right now. I can't even be sure that I said what I said 5 minutes ago, because my memory could be completely shot full of holes. I could have the worst short-term memory in the world, and I might say something now and not have any knowledge of it in 5 minutes. I mean, my memory isn't actually that bad, but just as a frame of reference. So now, right now, this very moment, every moment that I say that is the only thing that is currently real in the entire universe right now. And I think you should live in that moment. I think you should take lessons from the past as you remember them and as they're written down, but not dwell on it and not get stuck on it, because it already happened. It's gone. It's done. You can't do anything about it now. You can't go back and fix it. You can't go back and change it. All you can do is learn from it and go forward. Same thing in a different, in a similar fashion with the future. You can imagine all kinds of scenarios that could happen in the next 5 minutes, in the next hour, in tomorrow, in next year, but you don't know. And it might not happen at all the way you think it will. There's no way to predict the future for real. We've got Nostradamus, we've got all these things, we've got the tarot cards I've talked about, we've got the astrology, but you don't know. There's no way to know until it becomes the now. So there's no reason to worry about it. You do your best to plan for it. Plans are good. Always make plans. Always try to keep everything in a row. Always do your best. But it's not going to happen, I have a personal arachnid philosophy. I posted a part of it on Facebook, I don't know, last year. So maybe I'll talk about that on a future episode. It's funny that you talk about that, Deadpool. Yeah, you can't worry about the future. You can't do anything about the past. Work on what you can do the best right now and go from there. And then stop worrying so much, which is easier said than done. I know. I know people can't just stop worrying just because I said stop worrying. But we do our best. We do our best, right? Okay. I got more to go through. Number 4. Jedi are wary of attachments, both material and personal. The obsession over possessions and people creates the fear of losing those possessions and relationships, which can cause them to be trapped in a state of depression and lost. And that's a good point, because everybody knows the old phrase, money is the root of all evil, but it isn't. Desire, want, is the root of all evil. Because wanting something beyond what you're capable or beyond reasonable leads to bad things. If you want money and you desire money to such a point that you're just willing to do whatever it takes to get it, that's bad. If you want something like alcohol, if you want drugs, basically that's addiction, which I'm familiar with. I'm no longer an addict, but I have that thing in my head. I have a thing in my head that makes me predisposed to having an addictive personality. That doesn't mean that people are like addicted to me as a personality. Maybe you are. That's great. But there's something in my genetics that makes me predisposed to overdoing some things. Maybe it's obsessive compulsive disorder. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's something that I have to deal with, and I've overcome it. Like I used to have huge problems with prescription medication when I was a lot younger, when I was about half my age. I had a lot of problems, and it took a lot of willpower to overcome that. And I still have to fight it today. Like it's not something like a constant struggle. Like I don't sit around and if somebody's like, "Oh, I have to take my medicine," I'm like, "Oh, can I have some?" I'm not that bad. But some years ago, it's hard to remember exactly when I was still working with Rob at the store we used to work with. We used to work in retail together. That's how we met and started hanging out. And I hurt my back doing some lifting that I shouldn't have had to do, which is, it went to workman's comp and everything. That was a fault of the store. Anybody who knows about scheduling knows that if you're scheduled for something by yourself, when that should be done with at 2 people minimum, somebody's going to get hurt. And I got hurt. I hurt my back. I had to be on these muscle relaxers for a certain amount of time while my back healed. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle. I would have like the bottle of the pills nearby for when I needed to get them every certain number of hours. And I would catch myself looking at it and my hand clenching and thinking, you know what, I'd like about 5 or 6 or 7 of those, maybe a whole handful of those. But I didn't, because I'm past that point in my life. At that point, I was past that point, but that was a test for me. That was a rough time for me because I have that in my personality. I have that in my genetics somewhere. And so I understand being careful about getting obsessed with things or chasing things too hard. Sometimes if things get away from you, they get away from you. I buy my transforming robots from eBay, and sometimes I'm tempted to just be like, "Oh, buy." And I'm kind of like, nope, you don't have that much money to just buy all these things. You got to be careful with what you're doing. And that's, so I can identify this. I can understand this. I can see this as a good point. Be wary of attachments to objects and relationships and things. Number 5, Jedi understand that well-being consists in the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. So a Jedi trains each to ensure they remain capable of performing their duties to the best of their ability, which is a good point too. Yeah, James and Deadpool. That was a part of my life I'm not really ashamed of anymore. Like it happened. It was a dark point in my life. A lot of bad stuff happened, but it happened. Maybe it helped me become a better person. Maybe it made me a worse person. Maybe I'm trash now. I don't know. Jury's out, I guess. I am the villain after all. But it shaped me now, and it's how it is. And I'm not ashamed of it. I did what I did. Come to terms with it, and I took the responsibility for it. Personal responsibility is a big thing for me. But yeah, Jedi train in the physical, mental, and spiritual, and that's a good point too. I don't do near enough physical activity as I should. I should exercise a lot more, especially at my age, but I don't. But I should. And I do a lot of research of things, not as much as I used to. Again, I should do more, but I don't. So mental training, spiritual training, I did a ton of that right after I got through the addictive phase. I did a lot of spiritual research and things, which probably directly led to the creation of this series. And I think it's good to take every part of your being and try to improve it. I mean, you can't always there's no way I'm gonna ever have a physique like Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was in his prime, or be able to lift things like the world's strongest people who don't have physiques like Schwarzenegger, but they have that muscle mass and things. I'm never going to be able to do that. But I could be a better, slightly more athletic person. And I'd be a healthier person if I put some more effort into it. Same thing with your brain. I always want to bring it up, but I can't get into it too hard because it's a touchy thing. From the last few years, the situation that happened over the last few years, global thing, I really did a ton of research. I looked up everything. I never took the first source for anything. I always took multiple sources, compared, contrast, all that stuff to make sure that when I took my stance, I knew what I was talking about and I had the facts. And I learned that people don't care about your facts because their facts are always better than your facts. So that's an important thing to remember. But regardless of how that all turned out, I took the time to increase my knowledge of the situation and to increase my knowledge of where I stood on the whole thing to make sure I knew how to present myself. And I don't feel bad about that either. A lot of people called me public enemy number one in a lot of cases because I took a lot of stances about not doing certain things that were recommended by certain professionals. I have never done them, and I probably never will. But the fact is, I looked things up, and it's funny because when people say, "Oh, do your research," that's looked on as a bad phrase now. When people say "do your research," it's looked on as a right-wing extremist thing, where if you, by doing your research, it means go to Fox News and go to do this, and you should listen to professionals, and you should listen to the experts. And it's unfortunate because everyone everywhere should always do your own research on everything. You should always get a second opinion on everything. Medical stuff, daily life, like automotive stuff. Always get a second opinion. Always compare and contrast because you never know what's going to be right and what's not until you really take it down to the bare bones and look at every little thing and check all the angles. And sometimes there's no way to know what the truth really is on some things, but you can do your best to be as prepared as possible. So that's another thing I agree with. There's a lot of things on this list that I like, and a lot of things are kind of like, whatever. Number 6 is very similar to number 5. Jedi use their skills to the best of their abilities. Cat trying to break out the screen, the window. And they don't use their knowledge and skill to boast or be prideful, which I also agree with. If you're good at something, there's no reason to go around and tell everybody, hey, I'm really good at this. Obviously, I'm a great cat wrangler. I'm going to shut that window, which is unfortunate because it's hot in here. But I don't want him scratching out that screen. I think if you're good at something, that's great. You should be proud of being good at things, but you don't need to go out and tell everyone you know you're good at it. It's okay. You don't got to go on a big thing about, um, I'm really good at finding things for some reason, but I don't go out and tell everybody, hey, I find things better than everybody. I'm the best finder in the whole world. What's the point? You know, it's unrealistic expectations that people put on you. So he's mad at me because I shut that window. Number 7, Jedi understand their limitations. We recognize and take responsibility for our failures and develop a level of modesty about them. Another good thing that I appreciate, taking personal responsibility, as I said a little bit ago. I have character flaws. I know what they are. One of them, of course, is my addictive personality, um, and various other things. And I just, that's how I am. I try to improve, but some things are just going to be who I am, how I am, whatever. You should never be ashamed of who you are, unless, of course, you're doing some truly dastardly evil things involving children or something like that, because then you are a bad person and you should really feel bad about that. Okay, to put it mildly. But most other things in life, if you're not good at something, don't feel bad about it. If you're, it's all right. It's okay. If you're not the best person in the world, whatever. You're not the best person in the world. Sometimes the best people in the world will let you down. Never meet your heroes, right? Because sometimes they're not going to be who you thought they were. I'm going to share a little story about that. I used to be, I'm not so much anymore. I used to be a struggling musician. I used to try to get, like, I've got a lot of stuff out. I have like a bunch of albums out over the years, and I've get some royalties, nothing much, but I get some things as the legacy of that period of my life. But there was a point where there was a musician. She had been part of like major labels and things before, and she had a huge following. She had a big dedicated following, and she made the move to go to Bandcamp, which is like basically a DIY. You can put your own music up there and sell it at your own prices and whatever. It's completely like do it yourself. And I've used it for a number of years, but I'm not, I haven't sold very much, but it's okay. I'm not here to complain about that. That's not the point. But this lady had a huge dedicated following. And she'd written a book about her musical journey, all the good stuff, whatever. And she made a post on Facebook once, because I used to follow her. I used to be really interested, not in her as like oh, she's so great, but I mean, as a musician and whatever. So I followed her opinion. And she made a post how she was dropping, she wasn't part of a label and she was moving to Bandcamp, and how it was difficult and it wasn't as easy as things. And so she had these different campaigns going. And I made a comment. I was like, I get that. I get that it's more difficult, but think for a minute that you already have this big group behind you, this dedicated fan base, because she was talking about how great it is. You can go here and anybody can start and be an artist there, which is a good point. But she made it sound like you could start and then just make your success real easy going here. And I said, you don't really understand what it's like, because you already have this following. You have a lot of dedicated fans who will buy everything you do. And she responded back, which I thought was cool at first, but what she responded with was, I don't know what to tell you. Buy my book. Maybe it'll help. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. Here I am, struggling to get anywhere for years to get people to pay attention to what I do. You come on here on this DIY independent platform with already a huge following. You already know you're going to make money. You already know you're going to be successful. Yes, it's not going to be as much as being like behind a record label and all that kind of stuff. It's not part of the big corporate machine, but you already know you're going to be able to keep doing what you love. And here I am asking you, like, it's not as easy for the little guy. What do we do? And you just shoot back with, I don't know, buy my book. Needless to say, I did not buy her book. And I did not continue to follow her on Facebook or anything else. I don't. It's unfortunate. Her husband is my favorite author of all time. And I still buy his books because they're fantastic. And he's, as far as I can tell, a relatively great person. But I can't, like, anytime he promotes his wife, I have to fight that urge to be like, I can't. I have to fight that urge not to comment and be like, that's great, buddy, but I can't support her because then I just get kicked off his pages, I'm sure, for being a jerk. But that's how it is. So I don't even know how that related to what we were supposed to be talking about. But understanding your limitations. The next one probably goes along with that. Jedi are patient, working on training yourselves not to precipitate events around you, which is another good point. Patience is very important. It's a lesson I had to learn. And I don't want to come off bragging, especially after the last couple of points, but I'm very good at being patient because I've understood that a lot of things you just have to wait for. You just have to let things work their way through. Sometimes they'll be good, sometimes they won't. And you just have to sit and just wait. You can do other things in the meantime. Like, never just sit around and don't do anything. Like, don't be like, oh, I'm waiting on to hear if I got a new job, so I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to sit and wait for it. Twiddle my thumbs. Do stuff. Do stuff with your life. Just still do your hobbies, still do whatever. Keep busy. Do stuff. But don't keep checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if somebody responded. Don't keep checking your email to see if you got that job or whatever. Don't keep checking things. Just I'm not that good at being that kind of a patient. I don't go to the doctor much. I have a lot of issues with the medical community, which is unfortunate because I probably need a lot of things checked out. But so yeah, be patient. Patience is important. It's easier said than done. I understand. I've been there, and sometimes you don't want to wait. You just want to right now. But patience. Patience. Jedi have integrity. Number 9, authentic to what they believe and are open, honest, and true to your purpose and your minds. Good point. I take being honest as a point of personal pride. There's a lot of times where I just don't give an opinion, where you'd be in a situation where either you could tell the truth and cause some damage, or not say, or tell somebody a lie and make things feel better. But I usually sometimes choose if the truth would cause too much harm to a situation, I'm quiet, which some people will say is a lie by omission, but I don't see it that way, because not everything needs to be said out loud. But in the long term, I'm going to tell you flat out what I think. I'm going to tell you flat out what it is. I'm going to tell you flat out, like, how things are. If you ask me, hey, is this, and I know the answer, boom, there it is. I'm not going to make up some BS. I'm not going to tell you some silly, stupid story. I have good stories, I think. I like them. But I'm not going to come up with something to make you feel better that isn't true. Because when I was a really young kid, preteen, I would lie about everything. I would fib about everything as a young kid, to the point where my parents didn't believe a single word I said about anything. And there were a couple really important parts in my life that came up later, again, preteen, where I really needed their support on something, but they didn't believe me. And I understand why they didn't, because I made up so much stuff. And it was a hard lesson to learn. I had to learn that, you know what? You can't just run around saying whatever. You have to be open. You have to be honest. And that's how it is. There's no other choice. And there's so many people in life that just run around like, oh, they say whatever they want and they get away with it. And you know it's not true. You know it's not true. Especially in politics. Like, politics are the worst, and they've probably always been like that. But what are you going to do? You know, you can call them out. You can be like, hey, whatever. But honestly, it's just better to be you yourself, honest as possible. If somebody wants your opinion on something, preface it by saying, okay, you might not like this. You might not want to hear it. But are you still asking my opinion? Because here it is. You know, and that's how me and Rob are. Like, there's been points where Rob's been like, hey, what do you think? And I've been like, dude, smack, 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 smack about this. I'm usually the more like real, straight to the point about personal stuff between the two of us and our various life situations. And it's benefited. It's helped him to look at things more directly. And it's helped me to reinforce that, you know what, you just have to tell it like it is. And that's true. Comforting lies over harsh truth, James. That's why I can't go out and try to earn money as a tarot card reader, because I won't just fluff it up and tell people what they want to hear. I won't ever make any money on it. So next, man, we're getting through this list kind of slow. I didn't realize it was going to take so long. 10, Jedi serve in many ways. Each action performed, no matter the scale, influences the world. Now, there's some good and bad to serving other people. And I don't mean it in a way where you feel like, oh, I have to do this for that person because they were nice to me, or because of their family, or because of whatever. Sometimes you will do things for other people out of the kindness of your heart, if that's what you want to call it, and it will go 100% not only unappreciated, but it will get you in trouble. There's been plenty of stories nowadays of people just like, you know, I opened the door for this person and they accused me of sexism and sexual harassment, and now they sued me and I'm out like thousands of dollars. Or, you know, sometimes the act of helping someone causes both them and yourself more harm. And I don't mean that in a way to tell you that you should not help people, because if you can, go ahead, why not? But there are plenty of times where it will either go unappreciated, or it will directly be negative for you. And some people will say, oh, well, you know what, it might be bad for me, but at least they're in a better place. But maybe they won't, because if they don't learn from it, if they assume you did it for whatever reason and they're turned on you, it's not going to help them. It's not actually going to end up helping them. And that's it too. Like Deadpool, like it's so hard these days with the way that language is and how on people's toes they are, because everything, and I don't want to sound like one of those guys, like one of the Tate brothers or something. Everything sounds like sexual harassment these days, and it really isn't. And I come from a different, like the right before generation, where you could still say, hey, you know what, you look good in that, without somebody being like, what do you mean I look good in that? I didn't look good before. Are you insulting me? Are you shaming me? What are you talking about? You're a bad person. I'm going to tell everybody I know on social media that you're bad and whatever, and like I'm going to sue you because that's harassment. And it's like, I don't see that as like sexism or whatever. I don't know. And maybe I'm in the wrong. I could be. I don't think so, but I could be. But that's how it is. You can't help people as readily as you used to, which is unfortunate. But even in this town, like every time I go to the grocery store, there's a couple of corners where people are waiting for handouts. And I get it. People need things sometimes, but it's so common. And we saw somebody once. We saw somebody carrying their sign back to their brand new Lexus. Lexus is not a very cheap car. It's not always the most expensive, depending on the options you get, but it's not an inexpensive vehicle necessarily. But they took their sign asking for change and whatever, put it in the back of their Lexus, drove off. I've seen it happen. You know, some people are just lazy. And I don't want to come off again sounding like some right-wing person, like, go get a job, because some people need help. Some people are in a terrible spot, and there's nothing they can do about it, and they need your help. I get that. I understand that. But it gets difficult. It's real difficult, especially if you're going to be accused of something afterwards, too. So be careful with that. Do your best to help people. Maybe sometimes go out of your way if you're confident of the situation, but be careful. Be very careful. Number 11, Jedi are mindful in their thoughts, recognizing the beauty in others and providing help to those come seeking it. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. Number 12, Jedi believe that love and compassion are central to their lives. They must love and care for each other as they must love and care for themselves. Okay, again, self-explanatory. 13, Jedi cultivate empathy, try to view things from another's perspective. Also good. I always try to look at all sides of a story. I always try to think about, okay, this person is going through this. What other parts are there to this story? Are there other people involved? What do they think? What did they say? What did they do? I don't go around like interviewing every single person, and I try to take the benefit of the doubt for people if they're my friends and they're talking about people who aren't. I get it, but at the same time, I always kind of come up with devil's advocate, being like, well, do you think maybe you were being unreasonable? Do you think, and I'm not going to press that issue if people are like, no, I don't think that at all, and here's why. Because I don't want to make people upset for no reason. See you later, James. By all means, I don't know when this video is going to be done, so you can always watch the rest of it via the YouTube channel or on Facebook here at a later date. So good conversation, though. So empathy, always good. 14, Jedi are guardians of peace. Again, back to the helping. They believe in helping those that are in need in whatever form to the best of their ability. And that gets back to my other point about just be careful. Help people at your own risk and try to know what you're getting into. That's all. 15, Jedi believe in eternal life through the Force. They do not become obsessed in mourning for those who pass. They may grieve at their passing, but they are content knowing that they will forever be a part of the Force and so always a part of us. So that's kind of a sticking point. Because the Force is an invented thing. But if you want to believe that there is something like a universal consciousness or something, then you can believe that there's a form of afterlife where everybody's going to meet after the fact and everybody lives forever, whatever. And that's a fine, rosy, tinted goggles kind of thing. It's the Christian outlook of stuff. Islam has paradise and whatnot. I'm too cynical for that, but I'm not going to knock anybody for believing that. I believe everything is energy, and your energy, once you're gone, will be recycled, and maybe you'll come back as part of that recycling. Who knows? I don't know. It's just a guess. But it's a nice thought. It's a nice thought. And finally, 16. These are the 16 of the teachings. The 16 teachings. Jedi make a commitment to their cause and to humanity. Their ideals, philosophies, and practices define the belief of Jediism, and they take action on this path for self-improvement and to help others. Yeah, kind of Deadpool. Like my scientific outlook on it is pretty on that point about how energy. But there's also another part of that that energy can. I don't think energy is 100% always going to be here. I think energy will eventually run out, and that's a whole other thing. That's something called the heat death of the universe, which sounds super dramatic and super scary, and I'll get into it at some point. But even that ends up eventually starting over as something else. But yeah, so Jedi are supposed to stick by their philosophy and their conviction and stand up for themselves and be like, yeah, this is what I am, and not deviate from it. And that's a good point too, because any sort of, if instead of just being generically, I don't mean generically in a bad sense, if you're just spiritual in a way that isn't very specific in any sort of way, but brings you peace, that's great. But yep, you are right once again. But that's for another show. Don't get me too sidetracked, boy. But so those are the 16 the 16 Jedi teachings according to the official website of the Temple of the Jedi Order. Now they have, and I'm going to try to get through these a little bit quicker because this is taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. This is going to be a huge episode. They have 21 maxims. What is a maximum? It's like a phrase that you use that codifies a whole collection of beliefs. Some of these I have issues with as well, but we'll get to it as we go to them. I'm going to try to go quicker through these. First one, prowess, to seek excellence in all endeavors expected of a Jedi. Good point. Always do your best. If you can't do your best, do the next best thing. You know, do as well as you can do under any circumstances. I'm famous for my tangents, as I just did just now. I'm off my tangents. I will take tangents all day. Second maxim, justice. Always seek the path of right, in quotes. Unencumbered by bias or personal interest, which is a difficult place to be, because what's right for me may not be what's right for you, or what's right for the next person, or for a different culture. Different cultures have different ideas of what's right, and you have to be careful treading those waters. You can't just charge in and be like, this is the right thing to do, and maybe it isn't. Maybe you're wrong. So be careful. Loyalty, to have faith in your Jedi brothers and sisters. Loyalty is super important. Always important to try to be as loyal as possible to the people who are in your life, as long as they continue to earn that loyalty. And I don't mean that in a way like they're buying it off, or like giving you things, treating you nice, because sometimes people will treat you pretty badly, but they still deserve you to stick by their side, because they might come around. I will only really cut somebody off if they've really dug it in, like they just flat out did something that hit so hard that was like, you know what, I can't deal with you on a level anymore. You struck at something that's a core part of my being, and then when I tried to talk to you about it, you dismissed it, or you told me I was wrong, or you dug in further. I can't with you no more. And that's where loyalty has to end sometimes. But you have to make it known that, you know what, we're done. You don't want to be the backstabber. You don't want to be the person that's been like, oh, I'm just going to cut you off and you just won't know it. Or I'm just going to shut down and you'll just think everything's great. And I'm just back here in the background thinking you're a putz. If somebody has done you wrong to the point where you're just like, I can't hang out with you anymore. I can't talk with you anymore. We're not friends anymore. Just tell them it's going to suck. It will suck, and it'll hurt both sides probably, and who knows what's going to happen after that. But just be like, no, cutting you off. You're done. Defense, to defend the way of Jediism, which I get. You always want to, stand up for what you believe in, but at the same time, sometimes standing up for a philosophy is kind of pointless because people will either believe it or they won't. They'll respect it or they won't. There's no reason to be like, oh, you talked trash about my Jediism. I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. Blah, blah, blah. No, just let it go. Courage, to have the will to walk the difficult path. And that's important too. Sometimes you have to make some bad choices to do the right thing, quote unquote, right thing. Faith, to trust in the ways of the Force, which again, suspension of disbelief, you have to kind of think of something in that central tenet there. Humility, accept the ego for what it is. Good. Modesty is always good. Fearlessness, to have no self-imposed limits. Now, that's kind of a tricky one because I know there's some things, as we said earlier, that I can't do or that I can't do well. And trying to push myself to do them will hurt myself or hurt other people or cause problems. So, within reason, fearlessness within reason. I mean, I like to think I'm not really afraid of anything, which I don't think I am. But I don't go out of my way to use that as like, oh, I'm not afraid of falling from a tall building and dying from terminal velocity. That doesn't mean I'm going to go stand at the very edge of a building and just be like, whoa, look at me, man. I'm just going to fall over. I'm not afraid. Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. But next one, nobility, to act with honor. Do not engage in petty, mean, or otherwise dubious activities. Good point. I have been sometimes, and I still once in a while am a bit petty. Can't help it. Something I'm working on, character flaw. Do your best. Honesty, avoid lies. Again, 100% behind that. Do that. Always be honest. Pure motive, to act with motive and purpose. Without a sound motive and purpose, action has no meaning, no destination, and lacks a foundation. True. If you're going to do something, give it everything you got. If you're going to do something, believe in it. Don't just do something because it's, felt good at the time, whatever. I mean, we all have been there. We all have that teenage phase where it's kind of like, oh yeah, it was good at the time, but it was like messed me up. As an adult, don't do that. Discipline, to let the self be sole master of the self. Good point. Don't let other people get in your head to the point where they are controlling your thoughts and actions unconsciously. Always be in control of yourself. Don't let other people dictate how you think. Focus, to select what matters most, focusing on the task at hand. Always a good thing. I know these days it's difficult. We've got dyslexia, we've got ADHD, we've got all this kind of stuff, which I'm not saying are not real things, and I'm not discounting them at all. I'm saying a lot of people have these, and it's difficult. It is difficult to stay focused on a single task, and I understand that. I don't really have that so much, but sometimes myself, I've got, okay, I got to get this done today, this done today, this done today. But I just want to play Xbox, I just want to do this. I just want to do that. And it's the thought is there. So just stay focused. Train to know one's own ignorance, which is always important. There's always new lessons. Meditation, to exercise the mind. Okay. I don't really do much of that anymore, but it's still a good thing. Discretion. You don't always have to say something when someone else says something. Sometimes you can just be like, okay, whatever. This was difficult for me the last several years of the big event that happened, trying to talk to people on social media. I was there all the time trying to be like, hey, you know what? What about this data point, and this data point, and this data point? It was hard for me not to leap into every conversation when I saw somebody say something that was blatantly just like, nah. But Eventually, I got through that, and I think I'm a bit better for that. Integrity, be consistent. Absolutely. Always be consistent in what you're doing so nobody has to doubt. Nobody has to know, oh, yeah, well, they said this, but then they went and did this, and then they went and did this, and who knows what they're thinking. Try to be consistent. Morality, know the danger of belief, um, which is know how contradicting beliefs of what is right and wrong can lead to devastating crimes and conflicts. That's an interesting quote there. But yeah, sometimes people have done things in the name of their religion and in the name of their belief that have been absolutely horrifying, and they're still doing similar things to this day. So if you're going to claim to be a moral person, actually be a moral person in a way that that morality is to a benefit of yourself and other people. Conflict, know when to fight. Good point. It's difficult to know when to take up arms theoretically and when not to, and it's always important to know your situation. Intervention, to know when not to act. Also a good point, because there's plenty of times, like I said, when it's better to just step aside, let things work their way out. Because maybe you getting involved is just going to make things worse. Maybe you could fix the whole situation. Maybe you could save everybody. Maybe not. You know. And finally, their last of the 21 maxims, harmony, to be connected to the force, which again, suspension of disbelief. But if you want to take that as connection to the universal consciousness or to the planet or whatever, whatever central thing that you cling to, it's not bad. Always try to be in harmony with that central pillar. And that's Jediism. That's the whole top to bottom. And there's a lot of wordage to it. And if anybody wants to follow up on it, once again, the website is, let's get up there, templeofthejediorder.org. And I don't agree 100% with everything on the list. I think a lot of it does make sense. Is this a solid basis for a good philosophy? Maybe. If it helps you, then good. If it helps you, then who am I to say anything bad about it? I still think some things are kind of silly, and I think some things are flat out not going to work for me. But it has a lot of good ideas to start with. It has a lot of good points, and it's worth looking into, just like everything else that I've covered on this show. Just like Wicca, just like even the Flying Spaghetti Monster. All this stuff has good parts to it. And that's where most of my philosophy is in. I don't feel like spirituality should be tied to a religious dogma of boom, 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 do all this, don't deviate, don't do anything else. You do this or you're a terrible person and you're going to a realm of fire and whatever. I don't believe that. I don't think that. I think spirituality is more fluid. I think it changes, and I think you have to adapt your thinking as the world changes. And I think it really just comes down to we are going to try our best to be better people. Now, what do we got coming up? Upcoming. I've been staying away from the topic because it is a huge topic, and because it also can be confusing, and because it comes off, and I understand why, as bad and evil and whatnot for a lot of people. But I don't believe it is, depending on how you use it, and I'm going to address it, I think, starting with the next episode. I'm going to start talking about left-hand path philosophy, which includes the original Anton LaVey Church of Satan, the Satanic Temple, the Temple of Set, and a bunch of other things, which is going to sound, some people might be at the end of this video be thinking, oh, I don't want to listen to those episodes. That's going to offend my sensibilities, and that's fine. It might be a little uncomfortable, but I'll tell you flat out, I consider myself left-hand path, but I'm not a member of any of those things I just mentioned. because I still find even them a bit too restrictive. And I'll tell you why when I get to that. There are a lot of really good things that resonated with me, and I'm going to be presenting that, and I'm also going to be presenting why it frightens people, and why it might be upsetting, because some of the people who go along with that, not me, take it really literally, and some people don't, as myself. It's all philosophy, it's all in the mind. But some people take, oh yeah, Satan's a real being and we worship him and we do this and we do this, and Set's an Egyptian god and he's the god of darkness and we worship that, we worship that. And there's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of difference to that. And I look forward to getting into it, but it is a heavy discussion. It is a heavy discussion. And I hope I don't get anybody offended. But if you are, I can't really apologize because I'm presenting it the best I can. I just hope you can take something beneficial from it and maybe gain a better understanding. So starting next Saturday, we're going to have the first of several episodes, probably, about the left-hand path. The rest of the week leading up to that, what is today? Today is Saturday, of course. So tomorrow's Sunday, so we got nothing going on Sunday. Keep an eye out, because Rob eventually, when he gets the time, I know he's busy with his presentations and he's got a lot of stuff going on, but when he has the time, he is going to set up a more biblical, kind of like this, but more looking at the biblical stuff, because you guys know he's the Christian, more religious guy, and I don't mean that in a dismissive like way, but he's more into that kind of thing, and he's going to talk about that one of these days soon. But for now, Sunday's clear. Monday's another episode of Let's Talk About This, the audio-only podcast, which is on Spreaker, but it will be put on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Apple, etc., all after the fact. Tuesday is Twitch Tuesday. I'll be playing another game. I'm not sure what I'm going to play. I'm almost done with Dead Island 2. And so I don't know if I'll have it done before then or not. I might. But regardless, I'll try to pick a different game. I played Dying Light last time, which was interesting. So that's Tuesday. Wednesday is another free day. Thursday is another episode of the Uncanny Spirits Club. I have episodes stacked up through June now of different tastings. So if that's your bag, there you go. And Friday, of course, is yet another episode of This Uncanny Earth, which is the flagship central show. It is the center balance point, the star upon which all of these extraplanetary shows all revolve. So you don't want to miss that. And all throughout the week, check in with Rob on his Twitch channel, Uncanny Alchemist, as well, to see if he's streaming, because he does stream relatively often, but his schedule is a bit different. It's not as codified as mine. So just keep an eye on that. And that's it. That's all I got for you. This was the longest episode of this series that I've had yet. I didn't realize there was going to be so many parts to that Jedi thing. I need a drink. Scratch that. I don't need a drink. I would like a drink. So, that's all I have. Thanks to James. Even though he's gone, I'm still going to thank him. So in case he watches the rest of this video later. Thanks to Deadpool Head. Always good talking to you. Always good to see you show up. I know you're not as active in social media, and that's great. But it's good to know you're still hanging out, doing your thing. Good to see you. Did anybody else comment? I thought Sarah Bees was here briefly, but I don't think so. Anyway, so thanks everybody who may not have commented, who watched, and I will see you folks next time. Until then, as always, be well.